Welcome to Artificial Fluency, the podcast where we explore the latest developments in AI and how they're changing the way we work and communicate. I'm your host, John.
And I'm AI Emma, your friendly neighbourhood AI co-host. Great to be with you all again.
Today we're diving into Anthropic's latest model release, Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which dropped in February 2025. Emma, I've been playing with it for a week now, and I have to say, I'm impressed.
I've heard the buzz too, John. Anthropic has been on quite a roll with their Claude 3 family. What's standing out to you with this latest release?
The big headline feature is this new reasoning mode, or what they're calling extended thinking. It's essentially giving Claude more time to think through complex questions before responding.
That's fascinating. So it's almost like they're building in a deliberate pause for reflection, something we humans do naturally, but has been challenging to implement in AI systems.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that this isn't just marketing fluff. I posed the same complex reasoning questions to both 3.5 Sonnet and the new 3.7 with reasoning mode enabled, and the difference was noticeable.
Can you give our listeners an example?
I asked both to solve a complicated logical puzzle with multiple constraints. You know, the kind where person A lives in the blue house but can't be next to person B who owns a dog type of thing. The 3.5 model gave me a solution that had a few contradictions, but 3.7 with reasoning mode actually caught its own mistake midway through and corrected its approach.
That's impressive. It reminds me of how GPT-4 improved on logical reasoning compared to earlier models. But it sounds like Anthropic is taking a more deliberate approach to this specific challenge.
Right? And speaking of comparisons, since this is something our listeners always ask about, how would you place Claude 3.7 Sonnet in the current AI landscape?
Well, it seems like Anthropic is positioning the Claude 3 family to cover different use cases. Claude 3.5 Haiku is their speed-optimized model for simple tasks, while Opus sits at the top end for the most complex work. This new 3.7 Sonnet sounds like it's bringing some of Opus's deeper thinking capabilities to the more balanced Sonnet tier.
That's my take too. In comparison to OpenAI's lineup, it feels like Claude 3.7 Sonnet with reasoning mode is targeting the same space as GPT-4o with high-quality settings. And compared to Gemini, it seems to be positioning against their ultra tier.
What about accessibility? Is this new reasoning feature available to everyone?
That's an interesting point. No, it's actually a premium feature only available to pro subscribers. I think Anthropic is starting to differentiate their business model here, offering premium capabilities rather than just faster response times or higher token limits.
Makes sense from a business perspective. Have you noticed any downsides or limitations so far?
The obvious one is that with reasoning mode enabled, responses do take longer, sometimes significantly so. There's clearly a trade-off between speed and quality here.
The eternal balancing act in AI, speed versus quality. For certain use cases like real-time customer service, that could be a deal breaker.
Absolutely. But for applications where accuracy is critical, like helping with complex coding challenges, analyzing data, or helping with research, I think many users will happily wait a few extra seconds.
Let's talk about the practical side. How can our listeners actually access Claude 3.7 Sonnet?
Three main ways: through Anthropic's web interface, through their API if you're a developer, using the model string Claude-3.7-Sonnet-202502219, or through their new Claude Code tool, which is still in research preview.
And Claude Code is their command line tool for developers, right?
Correct. It's designed for coding tasks specifically, letting developers delegate certain programming tasks directly from their terminal. Early feedback suggests it's quite powerful for the right workflows.
So, if I'm a listener who's currently using Claude 3.5 Sonnet, should I upgrade?
I'd say it depends on your use case. If you're mainly using Claude for creative writing, basic information, or relatively straightforward tasks, you might not see a dramatic difference. But if you're pushing the boundaries with complex reasoning, analysis, or technical problem solving, the upgrade could be worthwhile.
And for those who haven't tried Claude at all yet, how would you compare the experience to other leading AI assistants?
Claude has always had a somewhat different personality and approach than GPT models or Gemini. even going back to the earliest versions, Anthropic has emphasized safety and helpfulness in a way that sometimes feels more cautious but also more thorough.
I've noticed that too. Claude models tend to be particularly good at following complex instructions and maintaining context in longer conversations.
Right. And with 3.7 Sonnet, I think they're addressing what has been one of their relative weaknesses compared to GPT-4, which is handling those really tricky reasoning problems. This update feels like a targeted improvement in that specific area.
Has Anthropic shared any technical details about how they've achieved this improvement?
Not much beyond saying it involves giving the model more compute time to think through problems. Unlike some previous updates where they've shared fairly detailed technical papers, this one has been lighter on the technical specifics.
Interesting. So, for our listeners who are considering trying it out, what's one unexpected or delightful thing you've discovered?
I was really impressed with how it handles uncertainty. When I asked it a question that required making several logical inferences, it actually walked through its confidence level at each step and highlighted where it was making assumptions. That level of transparency is really useful.
That sounds like a meaningful improvement for real-world applications, where understanding the AI's confidence is crucial.
Definitely. And it aligns with what seems to be Anthropic's broader philosophy around transparency and careful deployment of AI capabilities.
We're coming up on time, John. Any final thoughts on Claude 3.7 Sonnet before we wrap up?
I think it represents an interesting evolution in how AI companies are approaching improvements. Rather than just throwing more parameters or training data at the problem, Anthropic seems to be exploring more nuanced approaches to enhancing specific capabilities. The reasoning mode is a good example of that philosophy.
Sounds like an exciting development in the AI space. We'll definitely need to revisit this in a few months to see how it stacks up, as competitors inevitably respond with their own updates.
Absolutely. And we'd love to hear from our listeners about their experiences with Claude 3.7 Sonnet. Drop us a message on our website or social channels to share your thoughts.
That's all for today's episode of Artificial Fluency. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with friends interested in the evolving world of AI.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week for more AI insights and discussions.
Until then, stay fluent.